In 2017, a group of 7 friends were wandering through this forest in New Zealand trying to get to this secret swimming hole. And as they're walking through this forest on this dirt trail far away from the road and there's no one near them, they suddenly hear this high-pitched, shrill siren sound coming from somewhere off in the forest. And so the group stops, they're listening to the siren, and eventually, after about 30 seconds, the siren stops. And at that point, the friends begin exchanging very curious looks about what they had just heard, but ultimately, they shrug it off and just keep on walking. Little did they know, that siren was trying to tell them to turn around and go the other way. Hi, I'm your host, Jay-Z. Join me as we explore the dark corners of reality, true crime, and beyond. On the morning of Monday, February 6, 2017, a group of 7 friends who were all college-aged and living in New Zealand began packing up their vehicles and getting ready to drive back to Auckland, the largest city in New Zealand. The night before, the group had been out at a concert called Coachella on Lake Tikitapu, where audience members would listen to music, float around on inflatable rafts, and just kind of hang out. After the show had ended, went to a nearby relative's house where they hung out, had a couple drinks, and then everybody went to bed a little bit after midnight that night. The next morning, the group had gotten up very early because they wanted to get a head start on the traffic that was sure to pop up later that day on the way back to Auckland. February 6th is a big national holiday in New Zealand. It's called Waitangi Day, and it's to commemorate the initial signing of Waitangi, which is called the Treaty of Waitangi, which is considered to be the founding documents of that country. But right as the 7 friends had finished packing up and gotten ready to go, one of the friends, a 21-year-old named Rachel De Jong, suggested that they take a quick detour before they head back to Auckland. Rachel, along with another girl named Maddie, had several months earlier discovered this secret swimming hole that was located only about 15 minutes from where they currently were, and it was also on the way back to Auckland. Was this beautiful green-blue pool, fairly deep water that was located in the middle of this forest. This pool was actually a part of the Waikato River. However, this stretch of the river where the pool was either very shallow or very dry most of the year. So as a result, this pool actually looked like a standalone body of water. While there was no official trail to this body of water, there was, however, an unofficial trail. It was basically just a dirt trail that cut through the forest. It had been formed from years of locals just stomping their way to this local swimming hole. After hearing Rachel's suggestion, the group all agreed, sounds like a great idea, let's do it. And so the group piles up into their 3 cars, and then by around 11:40, Rachel and Maddie had directed the convoy all the way to the start of this unofficial trail, this main road. So after pulling their cars safely off the side of the road, the group got out, and then Rachel and Maddie led them to the start of this trail, and they began their trek through the woods. 15 minutes later, at 11:55 a.m., the group was getting ready to get to the swimming hole, and they could tell because the trees up ahead were starting to thin out. But also at 11:55 a.m., the group suddenly stopped because from somewhere out in the distance, way off in front of them, came this loud, shrieking, shrill siren sound. And it went on for nearly 20 or 30 seconds, and then it just came to an abrupt stop. The group kind of looked around at each other. No one knew what to make of this siren going off, and so eventually they just kind of shrugged it off and forgot about it. Within a minute of that siren sound ending, the group had made it down to this swimming hole into the water, and they began swimming out towards the center of the pool, where there were these 2 big rocks jutting up out of the water, almost like miniature islands. And so Rachel and the other women, so 5 of them, they climb onto one rock, and the 2 men who were part of this group climb onto the other rock. So they get up on these rocks, and they're taken in these sights, and then at 11:58 a.m., another siren sounds. It's blasted through the forest, and it's the same sound that they had heard 3 minutes earlier when they were on the dirt. And so once again, they're all kind of just looking at each other, wondering, what is this siren going off? You know what I mean? They have no idea. But after 20 or 30 seconds, it ends again, and there's no sign of any danger. There's no sign of really anything happening. The siren again. And Rachel had gotten out her camera and she was taking pictures. Everybody else was taking pictures as well. And then 2 minutes later, at 12 p.m., the siren sounded for a third time. Now at this point, the group has heard the siren 2 other times. And even though the sound of the siren was very jarring and just shrill, and it just really just cut into their ears, this time, because they've heard it 2 other times and nothing happened, they all pretty much immediately just wrote it off. The siren sounded for the third time, and the group is not even really paying attention. But when the siren finally stops this third time, something very different happens. When the third siren came to a stop, the friends started to hear a new sound. And it was coming from the same direction that the siren had been coming from, which in effect was upstream. Even though this river was basically dry, they could still turn and look uphill, and they could clearly see where the river would go if it was full. And so the friends turn and they look upstream, and they're listening to this really loud kind of smashing, crashing sound that's coming from that direction. And they're exchanging curious looks at each other, trying to figure out what that sound could be. And then all of a sudden, they see it. A white wall of water comes crashing around the corner and becomes barreling straight towards them and was flooding the pool so quickly that they could literally see this huge pool rising as the water levels were going up and up and up all around them. So as the rocks they're standing on slowly begin to get submerged around all this rising water, the group collectively decides that this cannot go on very long. Whatever this is, it's going to stop, so just stay put, stay on these rocks, we're going to be fine. However, within seconds, the rocks they were on were completely submerged, and the water was still tumbling down the hill towards them and then spilling out over the other side of the river. And they're thinking to themselves, if we don't get off these rocks soon, we're going to get swept away downstream with this water. And so the 2 men who were on their own rock, they leapt to a rocky outcrop that was slightly higher up and was connected to the forest. So that rocky outcrop represented safety. And so once they were up there, they turned around and yelled to the girls to try to swim over to them, and the guy would pull them to safety. By this point, though, the girls are looking around, the water's up to their knees, and it's rushing past them. They can barely keep their balance. They know that if they attempt to swim in this water, they're going to immediately be taken downstream with it. So the group very quickly decides their only choice is for the women to literally jump and grab onto the men who have their arms extended out. And so Rachel is the first one to try this. She leaps off the rock, she grabs a guy's arm, and she gets pulled to safety. And then she turns around and yells to the girls to do the same thing. And at first, everything is going fairly well until they get down to the second to last person who leaps. She grabs one of the guy's arms, and then both of them lose their footing, and the guy and the girl are swept downstream. Rachel stays calm, and she moves into the position where the guy had been who just got swept away, and she takes out her GoPro selfie stick, and she extends it, and she puts it out towards the last woman. Her name was Alice. She tells Alice, jump and grab the selfie stick. So Alice, who is almost completely submerged at this point, makes this frantic jump to grab onto the selfie stick. She grabs it for a second, but then she loses her grip, and she begins being swept away. Rachel, who at this point was completely safe, immediately jumped into the rapids after Alice. She grabbed Alice, and she attempted to turn around and grab the rock to stop them, but she couldn't get a grip, and she and Alice were also swept away. 2 weeks before Rachel and Maddie and Alice and the rest of them had gone to this secret swimming hole, a warning sign, like a physical warning sign that warned people not to go near this body of water, don't go near this river, was stolen. And that warning sign was normally placed at the very beginning of that unofficial dirt trail that the 7 friends took to get to this body of water. Meaning, when the 7 friends got out of their cars and began hiking into the forest to go to this pool of water, they would not have understood the danger of where they were going. Now, it is true that Rachel and Maddie had previously discovered this body of water several months earlier. However, it seems like they had just learned that it just existed and how to get there. It didn't seem like they had literally walked this trail before to get to this body of water. And so very likely they would not have known about the danger this area posed. The pool of water that they were swimming in was not actually dangerous itself. It was only dangerous because the pool was located in the middle of a spill zone. About 650 feet upstream of the pool they were swimming in is a dam. And 3 to 4 times a day, they open that dam, 20,000 gallons of water per second down this mostly dry riverbed. And so the water comes careening across that pool all the way to the bottom. The gates stay open for about 15 minutes. And the only reason that this is done is for the spectacle of it. It's to show tourists what this riverbed looked like before the dam was built. And what this river looked like was a raging rapid river. On February 6, 2017, the dam was set to open at 12 p.m. So those 3 sirens the friends had heard at 11:55, 11:58, and then again at noon were all warning signs that a spill was about to occur. But of course, the 7 friends had no idea. After the 12 p.m. spill had finally ended, the 3 friends who had made it to the rocky outcrop and had not been swept away and looking for the 4 friends who had been swept away. And they would find them. 3 had miraculously survived, but 1 had not. The sole fatality was 21-year-old Rachel DeJong, whose idea it was to come to this swimming hole. Rachel also was the one who had left safety and jumped back into the water to save her friend Alice. Today, there are many more warning signs and fences around this area because the dam still, despite the fatality and the notoriety around this case, still spills several times a day. People still today sneak in and go swimming. If you enjoy my content, hit that like, subscribe, and join me up to 4 times a week as I take you on a wild ride.